This reading shall be both a criticism and celebration of religion. It's about a peasant population left behind by fascist transhumanists despite their faith. So my karmic mission is to save them from the fascist engineered devil and its assaults that is set loose on them. It's also an example of how even a radical, so-called minority visionary like myself can still internalize Eurocentric ideals of ugliness and corruption in the form of me fighting a dark, shadowy, malformed foe. So to rephrase that, it's an example of how, even a counter-revolutionary writer can still internalize these kind of patterns. I wrote this in my late 20s, during the height of the Lord of the Rings movies trilogy. The dark orcs and other tribal foes were the familiar others, like the popular enemies in pop culture and all that. So, like Darth Vader, how he's dark, So now my vision has evolved, matured, and now I stand up to badly scarred, lumbering barbarians, as in Barbie and Aryans, and the hater players who are their pale imitations. I was also haunted by the rousing battle of Helms, I believe it was called, in the Two Towers, because there was a dark undercurrent, despite the triumph of the forces of light, including the Spartan last stand in the movie 300. Many blacks and other minorities cheered on the barbarians, buying into these coded fascist themes under the guise of just war, while I knew it was just another war. I sensed social conditioning, mass mind control for the purposes of the mob mentality, tribalism, in crowds, because as you know, the Iraq War was being fought, 2003, 2002, and all that. No, 2003 and all. But the climate coincided with all those movies. But my restorative countervisions reveal more of the core, that peace and shared experience that's pushing us to unite rather than compete and repeat. So ultimately, I reclaim my visionary mind in my battle, despite my internalized self-hatred or whatever, racism. Okay, this is the story. This world may not be the one you know, but its problems and issues aren't different from our own. However, its fearful yet hopeful citizens have an advantage. They have survived for centuries by reading the divine blueprints, their indisputable book of religious dogma. This book has helped them tell the difference between good and evil, right and wrong. It helped them to identify enemies and messiahs, instructed them who to listen to and who to shun. More importantly, it educated them about the loathsome tyrant, the all-powerful enemy of their virtuous creators, the Holy Mother and Cosmic Father. According to the writings, the tyrant is a deformed alien-like entity out to tempt, enslave, and devour the people. Most of the book's prophecies have come true so far. It had accurately predicted the dates and settings of wars and named certain oppressors. People were so convinced by its divine word that churches, religious communities were formed, all preaching the gospel. With such a dependable book, one could let go of any skepticism and doubt. There was a final prophecy. On December 31st, 3000, on the final minute of the final hour, all true believers must congregate in the eternal canyon. All shall be transported to the promised lands, while the non-believers will be consumed in a cesspool of fiery spit. The non-believers, those who questioned authority, who sought alternative ways of thinking and living, whether constructively or destructive, well-intentioned or misguided, who nonetheless only wanted acceptance and guidance, but were instead rejected and condemned because of their special needs and unique traits, were banished to the war and disaster-stricken deadlands of Ninada. Popular belief was that they had to pay for their sins, for they had embraced the shadowy one, or loathsome tyrant, the enemy of all righteous beings and things. He was a disfigured alien demon, horribly burnt from his time spent in the fiery cesspool prison for devils. How could people be so ignorant? For the book had all but spelled out the enemy's name, described his features, and listed his traits. How could they not recognize the good and pure? Finally, December 31st came, the final hour and minute, heading to the final second, and over a third of the world's population joined hands in the eternal canyon, which was suddenly revealed to them. The ministers and world leaders led them in song and prayer. Then the skies parted. But the stunned crowds saw no angelic, golden-haired divine mother or hulking cosmic father. They saw a disfigured, fire-scarred alien. Super dark. It hissed, "You people are now screwed because you have forsaken your true intuitive selves. I co-wrote the divine blueprints, and as a result of you blindly accepting my lies, I was able to mislead you away from all hope and common sense. You insisted that I plan out your lives, telling you what is good and what is bad." The loyal flock was outraged. "You wrote those prophecies? But we were law-abiding citizens and humbled ourselves before the gods. So much of what we were taught made sense, all those lessons about forgiveness and compassion. What kind of betrayal is this? You fools, the enemy is never obvious. He mixes lies with the truth, instead of taking the good for what it was worth, using it to inspire your own wisdom in divinity. We are all co-authors of the Book of Cosmic Knowledge. You used it to include and exclude people and ideas according to the ever-changing agenda, according to the age and dates agenda. You welcomed those who understood you, but shunned those you didn't understand. That's fascism in denial. As for the Holy Mother and Cosmic Father, they exist only within you, but you refuse to get in touch with them. They don't live here in outer space, where I rule. What can I say? You should have questioned things more. If you can't trust the hypocritical, backstabbing friend or peer, who's to say that a self-righteous system or organization can be as dependable, unless everyone is kind of on the same page in different ways? What about all those fulfilled prophecies? You people are so predictable and gullible that if I say congregate in the eternal canyon on a certain day, you'll do it. Need I say more? So, implications of social control conformity on an unhealthy level, systemic. We don't know we're in a cult or stuck until it's too late, but I get into that in another thing what works. So though the unfortunate masses disappeared under the gargantuan shadow of the demon thing as it stepped down from the heavens, some faithful followers in Nineveh didn't go and kept on praying and meditating, and a small iridescent sun, perhaps in inner space, not the outer one, which had dimmed somewhat over the ages, began to grow and burn brightly. Still hope. Part 2. One of the world's top leaders who had started the social reconstruction project after the loathsome tyrant's attack, confessed something to no one in particular. We admit it, the whole cosmic mother and father thing was a myth. The organized religions and other mainstream groups are part of the same nameless cult, which we define according to an individual's bias and pain. We knew the secret. We knew the secret. Humanity is in a state of collective insanity. Humanity, insanity. While uh, white, for example, white puffy clouds are actually giant, bloody eyeballs, and the stars are whirling, threatening spacecraft. Thus, we have to take mind-altering drugs on all levels, not just the obvious ones in our foods and just in our language and our descriptions, enabling us to contemplate religious ideas, which in turn helped us blot out the menacing imagery, the aliens, demons, and spirits that surrounded us. In other words, pleasant things like belief systems and loving gods enabled us to cope with the ominous phenomena. Yes, life and its mysteries were far more complicated than we had realized. Other than our shape-shifting reality, we know of another powerful phenomenon, the primal energy source, an iridescent sun in a black hole which is too powerful to tap. Some of our scientists and astronauts had tried to channel its energy for our defense technology, but they were disintegrated by its ineffable power. If we can't control that force, how can the ordinary folk begin to comprehend it, much less be exposed to it? This is, maybe I shouldn't say it, but spoilers, like the forces really emanates from us. That's why. But no one knows. That's why we must control and distribute all of the world's resources as well. Interpret all powers. Interpret the very unified field which we constantly change and alter just by the thought. Unfortunately, a few million were killed on that fateful day, December 31st. A demon, which was really an energy form that broke free from an interdimensional barrier. So I might translate that now, which maybe it's just some kind of machine, some kind of engineered, maybe a hologram or something. But it's really inside a cyber. It's really a cyborg. So it's kind of like simulated spiritual technology, which I get into in other videos. So that being interfered with our affairs and thus devoured the blind followers. Hence the robot, which goes out of control. But we've come up with a new way of keeping these forces at bay. We've constructed the ultimate shelter, the super city fortress situated on its highest mountaintops. Perhaps this alludes to space colonization or the seeding of an artificial universe, which I get into in other videos recently. Its high-tech exterior can guard us against these hellish forces, which on some level are no different than a fire, hurricane, tornado, or destructive element. Although your previous precious gods have been exposed as frauds, we need not fear anything or be anxious, because all feelings are biological in nature and can be controlled. There is no almighty God Savior. There are only the mental and physical sciences which we will use to protect us. You all will be safe as long as you try to fit in. All we ask is that you stop trying to be more than what you are. Lawyers, judges, doctors, police, soldiers, even celebrities and millionaires are all peasants in denial. So you see, even when I was in my 20s, I was writing this stuff. So now it's almost like 20 years later, and I'm still, these are the roots. So the old gentle Puerto Rican woman and her family had always believed. She's one of the few survivors, the people who we underestimate while the masses disintegrate or whatever, or relocate. They really create a new Eden. So anyways, this lady, she taught her grandchildren the lessons of the divine blueprints and had always prayed for them. But when the kids grew up, They disowned these lessons, parables, because the world leaders had revealed that they were hallucinatory, drug-induced visions. Thus, they needed to let go of the old ideas in order to join the next movement, which would put society way out of the reach of evil. So, the devil had lived, so if you reverse lived, you get devil. So go, God, go, if you do good. The old lady and her brothers, cousins, and neighbors, along with mentally and physically challenged people, or maybe they were just genetically interfered with, criminals, misfits, and outsiders, weren't able to go because they were considered limited, backwards, and old-fashioned. So they were left exposed to the negative forces and harsh elements. But the family kept on believing and praying, almost as if they were truly writing the divine blueprints. God must be real, they thought, all those wonderful feelings of peace, compassion, and forgiveness. The promise of heaven, good weather, and positive vibrations surrounded the populace high in the sky, but devilish giants rampaged throughout the ghettos far below, and poisonous smog overlooked it, and the poor folk were too terrified to come out of their cockroach, rat-infested homes. Some even lost hope, saying, "The meek have certainly inherited the earth, while the ambitious have taken over everything else." Unbeknownst to them, things didn't go according to the plan of the great relocation, because the cosmos has protective barriers, which actually is the equivalent of a tsunami. They wiped out the new settlers in the new worlds, the new colonized planets, and it's like the sentient cosmos like literally created a force field, and too much to get into, but I'll upload it sometime. Meanwhile, a muscular, bronze-skinned dragon man with a vaguely Hispanic look to him wandered around this haunted barrio bardo realm, but he was too jaded by his frustration, disillusionment, and alienation to be bothered by the demonic phenomena around him. He thought, even though it's dark, I can still see through it, and I see that there is nothing, which is really the source of all uncertainty. Suddenly, a small iridescent sun appeared before him, the same energy source in deep space that intimidated and incinerated the world's greatest explorers, lacking vision. It told him that a divine experience was never a hallucination. It was the perception and interpretation, eternalization, not internalization, eternalization of the experience that was the illusion, or better yet, alluding, hinting at something. It said, "Tell, you have faith and courage. Tell the demoralized believers that a power far greater than they could ever imagine exists. Now I give you the strength to subdue the giant terrorists." So again, at that time I used terrorists. Now I would reframe it as horrorists. The horrorists. Horrorists. Terror comes from the horrors. So this implicates, the fascists. He grew to the size of a skyscraper. He spotted the precious old woman, who he recognized in his previous life as his gentle grandmother, who raised him when Ninja left him, because he was the starseed of Ninja in this universe. So she left him with kind of like this meek Puerto Rican family, because a Christian Puerto Rican family, they have that, it balances out. They may not understand his tremendous cosmic sense, but they have the humility, so because they really own Christianity, which allows his cosmic sense to develop more. Before he could sweep her up in his great claws and celebrate their reunion, the slimy putrid giant saw him and morphed into their primal form, the loathsome tyrant. Whatever higher power that transformed him seemed greater than Tails. But yeah, his name is Tail. So this is an excerpt from my first book, Nightmare of the Universe. Sorry for not mentioning that, but yeah. So briefly summarized, it's about my final karmic journeys to resolve all my fears and horrors and traumas. And this is one of my adventures. I mentioned them in other videos. Basically, this is just all part of like that thesis of creating my ultimate reality through all these adventures and simulations. So, so back to the story. Whatever higher power that transformed them seemed greater than Tel's because the tyrant was at least 10 feet taller and wider than he. The tyrant charged, and to Tell it didn't seem like an entity or living being was coming at him. It was like being in the way of some juggernaut garbage truck, its gaping trash compactor ready to gobble him whole. The devil's charred dry leather skin was bound tightly over dense prominent mastodon bones. His bloodshot eyes were round and shiny like laser reflectors, beaming a burning ray through Tell's soul. The scars and scabs on his face didn't make him look vulnerable either. They somehow reinforced the ruggedness of his animalistic hide. Tell could tell how ruthless and powerful he was just by looking at his wrinkles and scars, like figuring out a tree's age condition by counting the ring-shaped lines within, though he knew it hinted at higher cycles yet unrealized, which will help him. The tyrant told him telepathically, "You may not know me, but I know you better than you or your so-called higher power knows yourself. My power is greater than yours, not because I believe it in a smug, self-righteous way. It's because I've had no choice but to overcome adversity the direct way, by imposing my will, not by seeking assistance from unreliable cowards. I've made alliances with the mighty, not friendships. I know your past, your failed dreams. You wanted to be a fighting champion, as well as a great artist writer, but you were too weak to follow up through those goals. You gave in to the pain of exercises, while other contenders persevered in the common test. But you complained about the common tests. You can complain and deceive all you want with your shallow, sheltering beliefs and scapegoating, but your fears will catch up to you, sooner or later, when you run out of excuses. You'll be cornered. You'll be cornered, held defenseless by your own immaturity and irresponsibility. So it's amazing how these psychological assaults aren't so obvious, like temptations or whatever. It literally could sound like your mentor, your teacher, your own parent, your trainer pushing you to, push your limits. So, it becomes really muddled. Tell, I'm not as powerful and fearless as they say. I've struggled to develop my powers. See, there's a little compassion thrown in. Like any other entity. When things didn't go well, I never complained about my genetics and situations like you did on Earth. I just persevered until I got it all right. Now we shall fight. You may avoid some of my attacks. You may even get some shots in. But what are you going to do when I don't fall and assail you with inhuman strikes? When we fight, you won't just be boxing me. You'll be fighting an army comprised of my masters and supporters. My defenses have been built by eons of hard-earned experience. Your motivations are feeble like a baby's cries. You're outraged just because you receive no respect. You want to save your grandmother just because she babied you. Why should I fear anyone or anything? The God source itself. Everything I possess, I went after. I took, not stole. I never hesitated to satisfy my needs. You have to psych up and pray just to have half of my courage, while I've had no choice but to respond instantly on the universe's assaults. Life's a battlefield, so why deny, slack off, or hide? At least I'm never caught off guard. Tell, you've always made obstacles more complicated than what they were, the challenges, goals, and by you trying to figure it all out will only get you knocked out. Your counter attitude, bred from your own doubt and unconscious self-hatred, will be no match for my iron will and steely confidence, forged by the support of those who only wanted the best. Tell, your God has lied to you. Ninja has lied to you, just like he did to your mother. Your grandmother, your goddess. What I meant to say, just like lied to your goddess mother, to your earth grandmother, and other forsaken Nenadians. Suddenly, Tell's recent victories and accomplishments became obsolete. He realized that he was indeed on the devil's home field. The other realms and battles were mere child's play playgrounds. He felt like a puny kid again. In that instant, he saw all his childhood enemies in him and thought, looking at his disproportionate brick wall head, I see that punk overgrown third grader who jumped me during recess when I was just a second grader. I fought back like they said I should, but that Neanderthal shit just clobbered me into a sobbing heap. Like I felt the battle was rigged. It wasn't that he was stronger and all that, but you know, punching me in the eye and everything, the ultimate insult. But again, rigged battles just to make me stronger. Even that loathsome zebra girl beat the crap out of me when I tried to fight back the next year, when she pushed me out of the lunch line. Why was I such a fucking weakling? Why did nature make them so damn tough and nobody ever helped me? There was never an authority figure there to intervene. They were only there to smack my head for the littlest offenses, like if I laughed during class or something. Maybe, because I didn't hide myself in class while they did. And when I went home crying, all my uncles and strong male role models made me feel worse, saying that I was a wimp, that I have to hit back hard, which I tried. But motherfucking fate stiffened my arm with lethargy, as opposed to letting it snap out like a flesh-ripping whip. Then there was that former soldier turned camp counselor who accused me of trying to get him in trouble, never letting me get in a word edgewise, yelling over my pleas and reasons, making me feel as though I was in a court of bullshit where anything could be used against me, no matter how right I was. And that animal hood in middle school who said that he beat the living Spanish out of me. But I didn't fight back because that's what got me beat up before. I could think of many more vicious, when you become better if you don't become bitter. So I chose to become better, but that doesn't mean I could have been very vicious. So going back to those thugs, I could have become the hate before the hate before the hate and say things that the human brain shouldn't say. So I'll leave it at that. All I can tell you is that my counter slurs, my counter attacks are not, they're original. Everything I say is original. My insights are original. Even my hate is original. Even when I hate, there's still more love in me than most loving people. So a revelation is coming to me, like a keyboard transmitting messages into a computer screen. I realize that all bullies are pathetic, predatory assholes, small-minded, armed with only a few native skills which instead of them appreciating as blessings to break from the game and which I'm trying to do now and restore some common experience, were used to intimidate and abuse because they've been belittled, and hence they play their role as most of them went to prison or became police or this and that. So all agents of oppression, and I boldly include even though the well-to-do, because they're benefiting from a system which I just described in the story, how they thought they did the right thing and look what happened to them. And this is where we may be headed, and this is why I'm reading it right now. Fuck that. This fight against the tyrant isn't going to be another traumatic case. Not another trauma. Not another humiliation. Not another trauma. Not another humiliation. That's my mantra. He defeats me, whatever, it doesn't matter. No one's above being challenged. I'm going to give it my best. I don't care how big and bad he is. He hates me, I hate him 10 times more. Let him block my punch. It'll be like blocking a missile. Let him strike me, it'll be like hitting a petrified oak tree. And let him grab me, it'll be like roughing up a mammoth lion. He may have claws and an iron hide, but I have bayonets sticking out of my shoulders, spikes jutting out of my knuckles, and hatchets swinging off my swiveling hips, and my entire body is a squirming, slashing, barbed wire steel trap. He may be a bulky battleship, but I'm a sleek torpedo, ready to sink him. My jab is ready to stab him in the eye like a samurai. I'm crazy like a kamikaze, ready to crash into the paparazzi. And if this demon happens to defeat me, may it be the most agonizing victory, so brutal and exhausting that he'd rather not brag about it, even discuss it. Let him suffer PTSD if he vanquishes me. May the arm he uses to conquer me be too painful to be raised in victory. I felt my muscles contract with fury, like bows ready to release flaming arrows. I'm a psychic warrior against the psycho warriors. We glared at each other, but his reddened, hazy gaze was a mere laser compared to my sunflare stare. His hazy gaze was a mere laser compared to my sunflare stare. My stare could set souls on fire and make eyes bleed. So as I'm reading this, I'm conscious and cool while kind of venting, but I want to take this moment. This is the clue to conditioning, like in boot camp, Marine camp, peak performance. And this alludes to kind of mind control, break you down, humiliate you, traumatize you, so that we can make you into a super efficient killing machine or a super soldier or a criminal. You know, this is how mind control works. You could research it. So imagine if we just treated each other well and projected our best at each other. So I have an answer to this approach called the chameleons, where we project others to be super smart, super beautiful, and in turn that makes us beautiful. We co-shape each other rather than right now it says self-love and define yourself so that others can see, but trouble with that, a lot of people are still deferring to a model of that. But when you do it in reverse, they're more likely to see reflections. So okay, let me take a break. So I'm gonna summarize the battle. There's a lot of action, but I'm gonna skip some of the more what you're used to, like overcoming fatigue and don't give up. Because I mentioned how your family would do anything for you, and they sacrifice, and I think that's a bit of a control system in itself, to play the game. So I find a deeper motivation. The blinding light flashed like a detonated atom bomb in his head. Now his footwork was so swift that he felt as though the ground was transformed into a treadmill, keeping the enemy off balance while giving him momentum. He didn't have to wind up his punches because he just exhaled and inhaled without conscious effort, and his strikes snapped in and out just as well. His arms expanded like vast iron shields whenever the limbs of his opponents flailed at his sides. He flowed because his detached mind perceived no obstacles. So the tyrant has separated into a team of history's most powerful warriors. So think of like every champion in every fighting sport, going against you. So with weapons. So when he saw an opening, he moved in such a way, meaning me, Tell, that conveyed that he had all the time in the world, for he literally froze the moment. When he punched the champion kickboxer's face, he merely put the warhead on the missile erupting from within, not forcing it on with rage, nor half-heartedly placing it with fear, but dabbing it with authority. And when he ducked, he just went down. When he bobbed, weaved, and swayed. When he punched, I'm going to punch my way. I'm going to duck my way. And he automatically punched, moved, and whatever more efficiently than even the masters of these techniques and all that. So all the armies reformed into their true form, which is the loathsome tyrant, the big being. He sprung on Tell, catching him off guard, but Tell was so much in the zone that his left ridge hand strike shot out in the supercharged manner of an arm jerking away when it's burnt or shocked, minus the pain. Electric currents replaced the blood flow in Tao's veins, freeing his limbs to rip and whip, and the ridge hand, as though a catapult for other shots, enabled him to set up devastating combination. So imagine being a vortex sucking in a tornado. Imagine being a vortex or tornado sucking in hurricanes, and then becoming a hurricane, blowing out everything that the tornado sucks. So you're all elements at once. Or you're like a black hole that sucks in the Big Bang, and then it becomes like a drill, a solidified drill cutting through any dimension. So, Jesus, you anime guys, we gotta collaborate. I hope it gets out to you. The bloodied and bruised tyrant was but a floundering, torn chart. The bloodied and bruised tyrant was but a floundering, torn target chart for his strikes. Knuckle strikes to his throat, open palms, and so on. So now I'm just going to he's down, I defeat him, so I just triumphed. This is the part where I triumphed over him. So the old lady and her loved ones came out of their homes and knelt down in prayer. And the iridescent sun, which had melted planets and asteroids in deepest space, appeared over them. But nobody was burnt. Instead, a great heartwarming aura of love came over them. They thanked the giant, me, Tel, because I hope I mentioned that I had grown to the size of a giant to fight Tel in this kind of realm of relativity. They thanked the giant, but prayed to the divine power source which grew before them. They were instantly transported to the promised land, deep within its fiery core. The God source fulfilled all their dreams and met their needs. A homeless junkie remembered what it was like to daydream and hope, becoming a kid again at an age when he was not yet affected by parental abuse and societal neglect. His scarred exteriors and interiors, produced by self-pity, hate, and injuries, were gently peeled away in heaven. Ironically, these were a lot of the thugs who took advantage of me when I was young, and I myself did bad things like anywhere because I was unawoken and traumatized, until I woke up. In heaven, he was allowed to be the lover and friend he was meant to be. An abused and divorced mother became a goddess. Her feelings of insecurity, frustration, and disappointment, many of which were imposed on her by other misled souls, were but sweat drops compared to God's healing energy. In one moment, a broken, demoralized girl was transformed into a precious angel. Her dreams to be a teacher and a proud wife and mother were fulfilled, without she traveling the roads of futility and redundancy. Roads filled with the roadblocks of discrimination, frustration, and selfishness. And the inner beauty of the ugly and deformed blossomed like flowers exposed to sunlight. Then something stranger happened. The true essence of humor, fun, love, camaraderie, friendship, discipline, and other alternatingly empowering and discouraging things which can be complementary, made themselves clear. In fact, everyone was so overtaken by this holy feeling that there was no place for cynicism or other isolating, condemning attitudes, sarcasm. Even sarcasm took its healthiest outlet. Or cynicism, all that took its healthiest outlet. They laughed uncontrollably and hugged each other. Even the despicable ones, the dictators, murderers, rapists, molesters, oppressors, and their accessories in crime were finally forgiven. The resurrected victims celebrated in such a way that the corrupt had no choice but to face their fears and traumas, feeling them as their own, yet they felt why they did it. So I get into this in other videos. The guilty shed eternal tears for every ounce of misery they inflicted, every fear dissolving a rotten, forsaken part in them, and the gracious souls forgave them. That's okay. We need you too. You're too precious to be shunned and despised. The traumatic past has been forgotten, along with the corrupt world that bred it. They all rejoiced upon realizing the ultimate revelation, that God was always there, only its true nature was never understood. So that's why it's a mystery, because it's my story to be decoded by your sense. So as for the rest of the people, the well-to-dos who retreated maybe they'll learn the lesson in a few more generations. But they actually, these peasants or whatever, evolved to the true higher intelligences that they're so futile trying to communicate with, postponing systemic collapses and the like. So I read this, and I hope whoever hears this could hear how I wrestle with my pain, my contradictions. You know, I'm not the best guy, but I feel like even at my worst, I could still hold my best with the best of anyone. So there are even the best people. I feel like their darkness is just as dark as like the darkest person. So therapy, mass radical therapy on all levels. All right, thank you.